So, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch, and some of you were quicker at getting the cake than I was. My name is Andrew Wallace, I'm Retco Operations Consultant. So in this morning's session, John and Johnny have described the plumbing, so everything that's changing in terms of the processes, systems and procedures. So this session this afternoon is going to describe what we're doing to take those design changes, take that plumbing and incorporate it into the REC code drafting, which I think we've had several reminders is going to be taking effect at MHHS Go Live in September of this year. So before we get into the detail of what's kind of changed in the REC drafting, we've got a couple of slides up front that provide some information on the process that we are going through now to get that code drafting into the REC for implementation. So firstly, because, as you know, MHHS impacts multiple codes, the MHHS programme has led a dedicated work stream to coordinate all of the activity needed to translate the end-to-end design into all of the impacted codes, so the REC and the BSE and DCUSA. RECCO and REC Code Manager, we're the people that understand the REC, so therefore it's been our job to translate the required changes, and we've been doing that by working closely with the programme and the other code bodies to make sure we've got the agreed and coherent handoffs between our respective codes. So RECCO and REC Code Manager, I think as John has already kind of pointed out today, we've been developing the consequential changes to the REC. So these are the additional changes that we need to make MHHS work, but are outside of the MHHS design, which has been developed by the programme. So to support that, the development of something which is hopefully accurate, complete, understandable for you in that code drafting, there's been a significant amount of engagement with industry parties. So thank you to everyone who's kind of supported that engagement. There were 5 tranches of code development under the programme, all kind of chunked up into themes, and that was reviewed at a programme work group called the CDWG and approved through a programme group called the CCAG. And where we've needed to develop those consequential changes outside of the MHHS design, that's been done with the REC MSAG, the MHHS Stakeholder Advisory Group, and then that's either been lifted into the programme governance route or taken separately through REC Code Governance. So in August of last year, CCAG, the programme group, approved that code drafting, so the changes to the REC, the BSE and the DCUSA, they were good enough that it reflected the MHHS design at that point in time. So following that programme endorsement of the REC legal text, this was then taken into the REC change management process with Ofgem using its significant code review powers to raise R209. So Ofgem uses its significant code review powers to coordinate complicated cross-industry changes across all impacted codes. So R209 was approved in November of last year, and that allowed the programme to tick off one of its milestones, M7. So keen students amongst you will have noticed that R209 was approved last year, and that was based on kind of legal text that was agreed in the summer of last year. So since then, there have been updates to MHHS design. I think another one came out on Wednesday of this week as various issues are spotted, e.g. through testing. And we've also spotted issues with the REC legal text that need to be corrected. So each of the codes, the REC, BSC and DCUSA, we're all therefore preparing some additional sweep-up changes to be introduced later this year. On the REC side, this is being managed through an issue at the moment, I-241, which was raised at the end of January, and we'll be using this to engage with REC parties and define the scope and the content of these required additional changes that need to be in place for MHHS Go Live. So we've got a link on the slide to a spreadsheet which is on the programme website, and that lists all the additional changes that we've spotted to date that we're proposing to make later this year. So once that REC issue group has concluded, then we're expecting Ofgem, I think Ofgem have agreed to raise the REC change later this year using its SCR powers. So those REC changes, they will go live at a programme milestone called M8. That's currently scheduled for Wednesday, the 24th of September in the programme plan. But we're expecting this to be moved to Monday, the 22nd of September, because that's the date that the systems all kind of turn on after the cut-over weekend. So this is very small, isn't it? So you won't be able to see any of the detail kind of in here, but I guess what I wanted to draw your attention to was that kind of middle swim lane. So this is the activity to take the issue 241 through governance. So you'll notice that quite a lot of this is kind of back-ended, and we are kind of looking at various options to potentially bring this forward, because there isn't a huge amount of time between this additional change being implemented at the start of September and go live. But there are some benefits in running this work kind of relatively late, so that we can incorporate any kind of last-minute tweaks to the MHHS design into the code drafting for M8. So I did want to note that there will be opportunities for you to engage with this change through the issue group. There'll be a review of the additional changes to the code, the CDWG, and then there'll be a consultation on the REC change proposal itself over the summer.
Andrew, we just had a clarification question. Specifically, so it's which forum? So I think you said the REC issues group. Is it the REC issues group, or is it the REC change issues group? Okay, that was for Chris. So
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The first Thursday of the month.
First Thursday of every month, which is a tongue twister.
Okay. All the Q&As are being documented as well, and will circulate. So for Chris or anybody else, we'll make sure that's in the answer for you.
Cool. So I think now we've got that understanding of how we're going to get the code drafting into the REC. I think we're going to change gears slightly and talk a bit more about the types of changes that we've been making to the REC and where you can find these. So this slide sets out the various elements of the MHHS design that we as kind of code drafters have been using to translate that content into the code drafting. Not all of this is relevant to the REC. For example, we've got non-functional requirements which typically relate to the DIP messages, and that's set out in the DIP rules, the new kind of code that went live last year. So the key bits I wanted to draw your attention to were the business processes, business requirements, operational choreography. So we've taken those and incorporated those into the REC schedules. So we've got an example. There we go, using my laser. We've got an example in the bottom left to how we've done that in the metering operations schedule for the agent appointment process. So these are the interface tables that are already in the schedules, and they've been kind of updated with the new MHHS information. And they show the kind of when something happens, what you have to do, who sends it, who receives it, and kind of what information flows between the parties. So what message types you're using. So in terms of the how, I think as John has referenced earlier, all of the market messages, all of the data items associated with the new DIP flows and the changes to the DTN, they have been captured in the energy market data specification, that product. So that's an existing product that hopefully kind of many of you will have seen before. There's an example of it in the bottom right. So that's been updated, and that holds the information on the changes for the REC, the BSC, and the DCUSA. So this next slide provides even more granular information on the types of changes that we've made to REC documentation. So across the top, we've pulled out some of the key changes that we are making to reflect MHHS design, and are covered by that SCR. Across the bottom, we've got some of the consequential changes that we are delivering through the kind of the standalone standard REC change process. So firstly, across the top, the first one to pull out is the metering operations schedule. So there has been a significant amount of change to that schedule. It's one where we've had to take apart, pull apart the kind of gas and electricity processes so that they are kind of separately shown. And we've had to do that so that we can reflect the new MHHS arrangements, e.g. for agent appointments and change of market segment, and to include the new DIP messages and the associated SLAs. We have a brand new schedule on migration, the new migration schedule. This sets out the processes for forward migration and for reverse migration of metering points under the REC. So clearly once that's all finished, that one will be removed from the REC baseline. There are a number of transitional arrangements that are described in the REC. And so these are the kind of the transitional arrangements that we've needed to describe whilst we're going through the migration process. These are captured in the schedule so that people can understand what happens through transition, but also what the enduring processes look like. And again, kind of once transition is completed, these ones will be kind of cleaned out of the REC. Johnny's mentioned the changes to the EES, and there's an update to the EES API technical specification, and that documents the new information that you can get from this service. I think we've also heard kind of earlier about the change to the ERDS service definition. This is clarifying the MHHS requirements for ERDS to get the data from the CSS and provide it to the SMRS, the Supplier Metering Registration Service, which is governed under the BSC. As previously mentioned, we're updating the market messages and data items to reflect the new DIP messages and the changes to the DTN, and all of that is hosted in the EMDS. And there are various other changes to reflect things like the change to market segments. So taking a quick scamper across the bottom of the slide. So these are the consequential changes, and I think some of these have been name-checked already. So the first one is the changes to facilitate the sharing of appointment information for the new smart meter data retriever market role via the CSS into the SMD service provider. We had a couple of changes back in 2023 to get the MHHS data items into governance ahead of go live. We've talked about the S number. That's the change that's going in for September of this year. And we're also currently going through R202, so that's a performance assurance change to update the performance assurance reporting catalogue. So this is going to be capturing new reporting requirements to allow us to monitor risks to the retail arrangements associated with MHHS. So this is a our T-shirt sizing chart. It provides a very high-level summary of which documents are being updated for MHHS. So there are 20 in total. We've colour-coded these so you can get a sense of the scale of the change. Pink are the areas with the greatest change. The ones on the right-hand side, there we go, they're in light blue. Those are the ones where there aren't any changes, but we have consulted with the industry just to check our thinking that we didn't need to make any changes. So the last area I wanted to cover is on the Cat 3s. So the documents I've been talking about to date are kind of Category 1 and Category 2, so that's one for the governance geeks. There are also Category 3 documents, and these are the lower level documents that detail the operational arrangements and the kind of guidance, and they're subject to slightly different governance rules, and they're outside of Ofgem's SCR. So there are 18 Cat 3s that are being updated in total. There is a plan on a page, which I'll just flash up on the next slide. And I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of these. So firstly, there are changes to the performance assurance and qualification Cat 3s, and that reflects the new MHHS requirements and risks. There are changes to the EES data access matrix, and that adds new data items and new MHHS data items and the new EES users. And I think there's something going out in the bulletin tomorrow to talk about that Cat 3 update having been approved. There is guidance for mowers on the population of the IF 005 DIP flow. So this is the message that mowers will be using to notify of changes to meter technical information. There is a Cat 3 on the process for updating the standard settlement configuration SSE and the time pattern regime data in the meter configuration tables. And there is already guidance on the electricity metering points, but there is a new version of that document that's being provided, which adds additional information for MHHS. So this is a Cat 3, sets out the plan. We update this as needed. It's normally published with the papers for the CCAG. We'll be looking to get this onto the REC portal as well for transparency. So this one is the last slide for me. This just sets out some links to some further information. So we've got the REC change that was approved last year, R209, and we've got a link to the new issue that was raised in January, the I241. We've got the log of the changes that are being made for M8. We've got a link to all of the documents that have been approved to date that are going live at M8. And when we approve the Cat 3s, we put them onto a dedicated place on the REC portal, and that link will take you to the ones that have been approved to date. Right.
Andrew, before we move
Yes.
on, Dan, no, do come up, but we've got a couple of questions that come in that I think are just picking up on points that you've made, if you're happy to take them, but I think, or co-manager to support. So the first one was, lots of S-step process types missing last time I looked in the REC schedule. Are these going to be updated via issue 241?
We'll ask the clever person.
I can't ask myself the question.
Yeah, so I think this is referring to the meter operation schedule, and there was some redlining that had some S-step messages that didn't have a code. That was because they reflected approved modification CPR121. That's now been implemented, so they'll just be applied directly into the MHHS baseline when it comes through to implementation. So it's not part of issue the MHHS issue, because it's just a baseline change, unless there's any others, but I think they're probably the ones that are being referred to.
Okay, and when we're talking about red line changes and change mark, is it easy to find change mark versions of the rec schedules? So where can people find those?
Yes, so all of the rec schedules, the majority of the rec schedules that were developed for MHHS have been change marked, and that would be part of the that was available through the R209 drafting. There's two exceptions to that. So the migration schedule was new, so there's no redlining on that one. And then the metering operation schedule, we didn't create a redlined version because we've sort of fundamentally changed the structure, so it wouldn't have been possible to redline it. So yeah, against the CP and also on the MHHS website, it has the redlined drafting.
Okay, and if whoever's asked the question needs to go back up a couple of levels, and again we can show you literally where to go in and where to find that documentation on the relevant websites, if that would be helpful to you. Last one, when will the new PAB performance metrics be published so all parties can understand the added new scrutiny they will be under the REC?
Andrew talked about R202, which is the REC change proposal, which is updating the performance assurance reporting catalogue, or the PARC, with the new reporting that we'll have in place for MHHS. That will give you an idea of all the areas that we're looking at. Where currently, there's no impact on REC parties. Most of the data we're trying to get from central data providers such as DIP, Electralink, etc. With an exception of, we're going to be introducing MTD reconciliation for MEMS, where there are some requirements for MEMS. That's at a high level, but that change will give you the detail of what's changing. But once that change is approved, then we'll work out what is the data we're actually getting from what we've requested, and we'll work out how that will be presented, and that will basically be new risk drivers that we'll measure.